The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hey, this is Matt Landry, the voice of Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars The Clone Wars. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars. This is where the fun begins.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 129.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hello there, everyone. I'm Mike Creavey, aka Old Ben, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Just a reminder to please be sure to share the podcast on Twitter and Facebook and let us know how we're doing by leaving us a review. Spotify also allows you to rate podcasts, so please give us a 5-star rating over there, and that really helps us get seen by more people who would be interested in listening to our show. So, we are recording this right now on September 11th. It just so happens to be, the day that we were set to record. And reflecting on the tragedy that took place on this day 21 years ago always brings to my mind the heroism we saw ordinary citizens exhibit in the wake of 9/11/2001. So in hopes of providing all of you with some inspiration and connections to that galaxy far, far away while we're at it, this episode is dedicated to considering what makes a hero, both in Star Wars and really in real life as well. So that's what we're going to take a look at. And joining me tonight to unpack all this are, first up, Mike Denz. Welcome, Mike.
Great to be here.
And secondly, and it's exciting for me to be able to say this, the long-awaited return of Father Fett himself, Father Andrew Kinstetter's with us. Hey, Father.
Hello there. I was glad, Mike, that you didn't take that from me.
No.
There you go. So, and basically we're just going to kind of dive right in here. We got a couple things to cover and we want to get right to it. But first of all, for a ham solo segment, I was delighted at this one. This didn't have anything to do with my own sort of exploits at the deli this week, but rather Dom's daughter, Lucy. And Dom sent us this picture the other day that we were just dying because it's so funny. She's standing there. She's a shocked expression on her face and she's holding her deli slip. And sure enough, what does it say? Order 66.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's only a matter of time till that happens for somebody, right?
Well, yeah. You think those order numbers have to reset every day. So somebody gets it probably every single day. And
you just hope it's someone who appreciates it.
Right.
So that was, and as always, if any of you want to share any of your ham solo segments of your own, feel free to send them to our email, which is starwars@sqpn.com. So, but we do have some other news too, a lot of news, and we could probably do a whole show just on this, but it kind of broke quickly. And I were you guys tracking on D23? Because I'm going to be honest, I completely forgot it was going to happen.
I saw that the Twitter announcements kind of after the fact.
Okay.
I was sort of trying to pay attention because I knew that Marvel was going to try to probably announce a bunch of things.
Sure.
But Star Wars, I wasn't really sure what they would announce, and they announced more than I thought, or they released more than I thought they would, since Star Wars Celebration is usually the big, this is what we're announcing for Star Wars. So sure. I was happy with what we got, and it gives us a little clarity going forward on at least timelines and releases of shows.
I rely on my 22-year-old daughter to come to me and say, "Have you seen the trailer?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "Oh, you haven't then?" "No, I guess not."
Save some time.
And she, I think she saw the, what's the Jedi title?
Tales of the Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi. So that actually came out while she was showing me some, the new Andor and I think a Strange Marvel, it looks like a 1950s horror film thing that they're doing.
Yeah, werewolf or something werewolf
something
by
like
night.
that.
Werewolf by night. Yep.
Yeah, it looks like cheesy on purpose, so it's probably going to be pretty funny. But the one thing, and I don't know if you were going to get into this, but like Ahsoka is seems to be being trained in basics by Anakin when she was pretty much trained when he met her. So it seems like, I don't know if I'm missing something there or what. I don't know if you noticed that.
They're potentially retconning things.
They certainly could. And I didn't. So unfortunately, just the way things have been with the beginning of the school year, like I'm so far beyond. Like I would just love to sit down and go through all of this in detail. So I really just saw release dates on stuff and the trailers for. So real quick. So we have Tales of the Jedi 6. They just say 6 shorts. I didn't see if there was a specific on how long they're going to be.
Just that they're going to be short. A
short is not long by definition, but so I got that much. I went to college and everything, but I have a master's degree. No, but so October 26th that drops, so that'll be cool because that's I think near the last third or so range of like the Andor episodes. So like there is some overlap there.
But it's all 6 dropping at once.
Okay, that's what I hadn't seen that. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be hard.
I think the other show's Andor, it's a 3-episode premiere and then every week.
Well, didn't they do that with Visions? Wasn't Visions all at once? And they were...
Visions was, yeah.
And they were short. Some of them were 7 minutes long. Yeah. So
they did they did the Groot shorts too, and they were pretty... They dropped them all at once. So if that's indicative, then these are going to be pretty short.
Okay. So that's probably why not a very long trailer. Because
no, but they were doing this thing where he was like... it was like back in that movie about the 1980 hockey team. Like again, basically Ahsoka would get stunned by the troopers that were surrounding her.
Right.
She'd fall down and he'd go again, and she'd have to get up and try to block it.
Yes.
And it was again and again. And so that's what I'm referring to when I'm saying it seemed like she already knew how to do that when they met in Attack of the Clones, the beginning of that animated movie.
Well, but it's interesting because we've got a lot we'll unpack with those, I'm sure, when the time comes. And we also got just a Bad Batch finally, more specific release date for January 4th, 2023.
And not coming in 2023.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But wasn't that, didn't they originally put out it was going to be September 28th
it
or
was
something?
Going to be fall 2022.
Yeah.
Because we were concerned it was going to overlap with our coverage of Andor.
Yeah.
So then Andor got shifted back because Andor was supposed to have already started by now. It was the end of August. So it got pushed back, and Bad Batch gets pushed back. And I even think Bad Batch, I think they said it was a 2-episode premiere.
Yeah.
So they're I think they're recognizing that, okay, we're delaying these, so we need to give the fans like a little extra to like satiate our appetite a little bit.
Well, it's like the third one in a row, right? Because Kenobi, they did the same thing.
Yeah.
Like 2 episodes. So it's like, could you guys just I complained in the Slack channel back at the time where I was like, look, things happen. I'm not trying to, sort of armchair quarterback all this, but it's like when I don't know, when I have a due date at work, I got to get that in.
Right. I think Disney should maybe do a better job of not announcing release dates until they are able to lock it in. I mean, because you see, the news about, how hard Marvel's pushing the special effects crews.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not healthy or reasonable either. So yeah, I don't want people to like, be so overworked that they're having health issues. But just because I want my Star Wars 2 weeks earlier, I mean, but yeah, it's also unfair to say, yeah, this is coming fall 2022, and then they're like, well, not
like they just start cutting corners, and you just start seeing like they try to slip in like just little like
here are the storyboards for the Bad Batch,
like popsicle stick cutouts, like dancing across. Like maybe they won't notice, it's just a blurg. Like no, I noticed. Like even they need to be done well.
Many Bothans died to bring you this on time.
Oh, I'm so glad that you brought those up because those are actually one of my examples of heroes later on.
Oh my gosh. Well,
the Bothans.
Well, let me just mention one or two more quick things so we can get to that, because now I'm just foaming at the mouth here. Mandalorian, of course, season 3, probably the big one. I think we'll probably come back to more anticipation of that as the time nears. But then perhaps the one that I think a lot of us were maybe, most excited about, but definitely near the top, is the announcement of the casting of, and if I butcher his name, I'm so sorry, but it's either, I think it's Iman or Iman, something, I believe, Esfandi. I should have looked it up. Didn't have time. I'm sorry. Joining the cast of Ahsoka as Ezra Bridger. And I don't know about you guys, but I was like, this dude looks exactly like Ezra Bridger.
Yeah.
Like slap some blue contacts in there and
it was comical on Twitter. And I feel bad too. I'm probably going to butcher his name too, but Mena, the actor who plays Aladdin in that live action, he posted on Twitter. He's like, finally the rumors can stop. It's not me. But apparently he did post on Twitter too that he actually did submit a tape for Ezra, but he's not the one.
I think he would have been
the
good
other
too.
announcement that didn't happen that I want to, and there's still potential for it, is Thrawn has not been yet officially announced as a, who's playing Thrawn. And that's the big one that I'm I have very high expectations.
I hope it's just because they're doing everything they need to make sure they get it absolutely right. So I don't know, but well, any other thoughts on news, or are we just going to jump in here? Because we know Andor's coming. Everybody knows that. So in fact, that's the next time you hear Secrets of Star Wars, we'll be unpacking that.
It was cool. I did go to the Rogue One IMAX re-release.
Oh, did you? Nice.
And so that was pretty cool because they did like a 10-minute preview of Andor before the movie started. So
was it the one that they put on Disney Plus? It was like the scene with him and Stellan Skarsgård.
To see the Disney Plus one. I imagine it has to be the same because it was. That would just make sense to release that same short. But it was really good, and it definitely kind of whets your appetite for what's coming. So I'm excited for Andor in a couple weeks.
Well, and that brings us, I think, into a good segue, because one thing that we'll probably be readdressing as we go through it is, the complicated endeavor that I think we know just from Rogue One of using the word hero in the context of this particular story, because it's muddy, and can open up a whole big conversation about what heroism is, how you understand it, what is a hero. And again, because, like I said, thinking of 9/11, and we have a lot of focus on heroic behavior, right, that you see in an event like that, or in an extreme, emergency situation, and anything where there's some sort of tragedy. And so I wanted to open this up just by sharing, if you Google it, which probably a lot of people have probably done already listening to this. So what came up when I did that was hero, someone admired or idealized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And the etymology I took a peek at, and I think, Father, you said you went a little deeper. So all I have is apparently from the Greek, I believe, heros, or, heros, which the definitions I found for it always comes up demigod. And which makes sense, because I'm thinking of the mythology and the stories of someone like Hercules, or someone where there's usually, and this is something I want to kind of get into, maybe this angle of it a little bit later. I'll save some of my thoughts on it. But ironically, if that's the case, it's to me, a lot of times we talk about heroes, like if you're watching a show of some kind, for example, I wonder, there's this real push that we have of trying to find heroes in the ordinary, right? And even in our own lives, like the normal people who stood up in 9/11 and did something surprising, supposedly, right? That's not exactly Hercules, though, right? I'm wondering, the etymology intrigues me. The idea of a hero is by definition completely not like you, or they're just a little like you, but they're also supernatural or something. So I wonder what you had to say about that.
I want to jump off that because
go for it.
I actually want to, I'm not going to contradict what you said, but Hercules, or the ones that we think are so far away from us as human beings, are exactly why we write about those characters in stories. And because if we relate this to the hero's journey, none of us are Hercules himself, or none of us are Luke Skywalker, but every single one of us, we can relate to their story and the hero's journey in particular. And Luke Skywalker, I think, is maybe a good one to kind of look at for this. But just the idea that he comes from an ordinary farm, and he's an ordinary guy who's got this call to adventure. And he's, taught by someone wise, and he has to kind of leave his home and go someplace new and scary and overcome trials and hit rock bottom, and then persevere and succeed, and then come back to, his home place, but changed and different. And now that hero's journey is seen in any hero throughout literature. Now,
Sure.
we might not be Hercules or Luke Skywalker, but the reason that we have that cycle throughout literature and throughout stories is because we relate to that, even though it's on a different level. Like, I was actually thinking about that with my current situation. I just started my canon law degree here at Catholic University of America. And so like, even I had a call to adventure. That was the bishop saying, hey, I want you to go study canon law. And so then there's an acceptance of the call and looking at our judicial vicar and going to him for advice, and then crossing the threshold was when I moved out here. And so now I'm in the process of the trials and the persevering, right?
Yeah.
And so like, even though we don't, I am not Hercules, I'm not Luke Skywalker, but we relate to them on a parallel kind of path when we talk about heroes.
Sure.
And so I guess I wanted to just say, like, Hercules and the whole demigod kind of thing totally fits that, as we're trying to apply heroes to our ordinary life.
Right.
But that was sort of a side. That was actually not where I was going to initially go with. I was initially going to give what I thought was a decent definition of hero. And actually, I'd like to maybe kind of throw this out to you guys too. But hero was something that, as I just thought about it, before I Googled it, it was something that I thought, how in the world do you define hero?
Right.
Because if you think about it, on one sense, it's like hero is someone who I look up to, or someone who has heroic virtue. Okay. Right. That's defining it by the same term. So that's not really helpful. But I found this definition it comes from the Hero Imagination Project. And actually I found this really insightful. And it says this, it says, heroes are people who transform compassion, so a personal virtue, into heroic action, which they say it's a civic virtue. So in doing so, they put their best selves forward in the service to humanity. A hero is an individual or a network of people that take action on behalf of others in need or in defense of integrity or a moral cause. And an interesting distinction that I found here that I'd love your guys' take on was the fact that being a hero isn't just like having a certain caliber or having a certain quality or having even a certain virtue, but it's like it has to be linked with kind of an outward external dimension that I have to have the virtue, but then I have to practice it. I have to I might have empathy, but I need to then use that for, helping someone else out, or, there's this kind of, it's not just enough to have the virtue. It's, you have to act out that virtue on behalf of others.
Well, that's sacramental theology right there. I mean, you get the grace, but unless you unless you act on it, then the love doesn't actually happen. And Jesus is always like, come and see, come do the, you need to trust and leap of faith, however you want to call it. It's funny that you asked that too, Father, because I was thinking of the hero's journey in Luke Skywalker. And one of the things that happens, and I don't know if this is typical of the hero's journey because I'm not an expert on how that works, although I've definitely heard George Lucas say it 700,000 times, that Luke discovered something about himself that made him more than just a guy that was on a farm. He's the son of Anakin Skywalker, and he has probably all these midichlorians and stuff that, whatever. And so he has that history. He has it in him. He has it naturally. But then, and kind of to bring it down, like in the sequels to Star Wars, it was just, well, anybody, you don't really have to be force sensitive or anything. It's just your average Joe can just kind of start doing this, which for me made it like lose its specialness. It was just like, okay, yes, I mean, people can be heroic, but they might just not really be able to do it very well because, it's like you can't be like, well, there's Spider-Man, I'm going to do that. No, you weren't stung by a radioactive spider. You can't do that. So you're not a real Jedi, whatever. You're not somebody who's Hercules. So you can, but there's things you can do that could be looked at as heroic. And my overall kind of our definition is above and beyond. Just, we look at a burning building and everyone's like, well, I mean, if we go in there to rescue anybody, we'll die. But someone goes in and says, well, maybe I'll die, but maybe I'll get them out. And that's the hero. No one's expected to go in that burning building because it's just ridiculous. But heroes do.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting point, because actually, if you continue on with what I was looking into, they actually make the point. They say that the opposite of a hero is not a villain, but a bystander, the person who stands by and does nothing.
Wow.
And I thought that was an interesting kind of take on this, because often villains and heroes, actually, they kind of start in the same place, and they both might have the virtues that are needed, but the villain is the one who takes the easy way out. He takes the deal, so to speak. Whereas the hero is the one who's, willing to work and make sacrifices, and the villains are how they achieve their goals is wrong versus a hero. But the bystander is the one who has the capacity but does nothing.
Those are great points. It's interesting, because I think there's a connection here in different ways to both you guys were talking about that I mentioned to you earlier. I wanted to bring up this word magnanimity, and I think a lot of people aren't familiar with it. I don't know that I'd ever heard it theologically, until relatively recently, a couple of years ago, and I don't know why it came to my mind. It's a word that popped in there when I was doing my list of characteristics of a hero. And then I found this really cool little, it's like a paragraph here from Dr. Edward Sri, great, Catholic teacher. And this is on the Catholic Education Resource Center. He had written this article talking about it. And he says this is interesting. So the word literally, by the way, means basically big soul or bigness of soul, which apparently Aristotle, I think, thought was the greatest virtue of all, whatever this thing is. And so Dr. Sri says, this is just really neat. He says, striving for greatness is at the heart of a virtue called magnanimity, which means greatness of soul. This is the virtue by which man pursues what is great and honorable in his life, even if it is difficult. St. Thomas Aquinas describes it as a stretching forth of the mind to great things. The magnanimous person seeks to do great acts, things deserving of honor. This is not opposed to humility. The magnanimous, easy for me to say, person pursues greatness in proportion to his ability. He humbly takes stock of all the gifts that God has given him and seeks to use them as best he can. As Aquinas explains, magnanimity makes a man deem himself worthy of great things in consideration of the gifts he holds from God. And so that just I think, Mike, when you were just talking about there, the idea of, and Father also, the importance of discernment, right? And knowing your gifts and knowing what you can bring to the table. So Luke, for example, use him as an example. You could use others. Actually, let me pick one of mine, if I may, for just a second. Galen Erso has become one of my favorites more and more, because it's just such a different kind of trajectory, right, than like most of these Star Wars heroes we grew up with. And what I love about this long-suffering, terrible, situation he gets put into, and as everything he tries to run away from it, and it finds him and it yanks him back to it, and he loses his family, and he's like, there's nothing he can do. And he's completely just in the belly of this beast. And in that is exactly where he's like, I know what I can do. It's like, I can bring this whole thing down, and he doesn't know for sure anyone will ever be able to. I mean, the odds of anyone being able to actually pull off, taking out this Death Star, even with the trap he sprung, is so unlikely, so just the hope that he has, right? The belief that this is something that he can do, and he doesn't even know if it's going to work out, but it's the best he can do. I find that a really heroic act, that costs him his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I think what you mentioned there too is that there's this idea that of striving for it, working for it, that being a hero isn't. I don't think that. Yeah, we're not just like born with the nature of heroism. Right. It's something that we choose to act in a certain way, but I think it has to by nature include virtue. and virtue, and I'm pulling from the Catechism here. Virtue, as defined by the Catechism, is a habitual and firm disposition to do the good. It allows a person not only to perform good acts, but to give the best of himself. And what I like about that definition, of course, is that it talks about virtue is it's a habit. It's a habitual and firm disposition to the good. And a habit is not something that you get from just like one act. Right. You have to do the same act over and over and over and over and over again. So, someone like Galen he's been working at it, and then, he's thrown into the belly of the beast, but he already has that habitual instinct to do the good, even amidst his surroundings. And so that's one of the ways that he's able to persevere in the midst of that.
One of the things about virtue is the way Christ describes vice in Matthew 5 after the Sermon on the Mount. You've heard it said this, but you guys, you shouldn't even be doing this, and you are. In other words, from your heart is coming malice and lust and hatred and that kind of thing. But he doesn't tell them, he doesn't scold them for it. He's basically like, I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to transform you so you can. So we're able to overcome weaknesses through his grace that is changing. So this idea of, the virtue, like you don't have it, but the habitual transformation of a weakness into a virtue or a vice into a virtue goes with that relationship with Christ, according to our Catholic faith. That's how we understand it. And so we don't have it, but he gives it to us. So he's the radioactive spider in this story.
Yeah, couple quick points there. Grace builds on nature. So it's definitely a cooperation. It's not like, somehow like by virtue of my baptism that boom.
No, exactly. It has to be both. You couldn't just do it on your own. Right. Like St. Peter trying to say, I'll, die with you and I don't even know you. And you can't do it if you can't just be like, okay, just zap me so I become the Incredible Hulk. No, that doesn't work either. It's both.
Right. And I think that's actually something just to keep in mind from just a generic kind of Catholic standpoint, because we don't want to fall into, Pelagianism where like I can achieve my own salvation. Like I don't need grace. Right. I can do it all myself. But on the other hand, it's not like it's all God and I do absolutely nothing. There's this both and cooperation with grace that we always have to kind of keep in balance and not go too far.
We need to read James every once in a while.
Yes, faith without works is
dead. Ignoramus.
Let me ask you guys something here too, because I wasn't planning on bringing this guy up, but he's relevant to, of course, Andor's coming up. But Saw Gerrera is such a fascinating character because and I've talked before about how in one sense it's difficult to play the blame game necessarily with Saw, because from one stance I think if you're empathetic you can understand how someone like him could get so incapable of trusting others and always seeing an enemy under every rock, especially when there's one under almost every rock. But I wondered, is part of his flaw, maybe Saw's flaw, that he is very Pelagian in a way. Like he doesn't seem to really talk a lot about the cause, like what's right. It's like a very I don't know, at least my take, it's a very will-driven, because he very frequently falls into the same thing of like the ends justify the means, right? Which is what the Empire does. It's just that Saw isn't the Empire. I wonder if it's part of it.
I think that's what causes him to be so untrusting and falls into this. Yeah, like we have to do this. I never really linked him to Pelagianism. That's an interesting kind of thought. Yeah, but I think it fits. He sort of feels like only he. Well, I guess he feels that he has to do the rebellion in a certain way. Like I do not consider him a hero because he chooses to achieve his ends through means that are not morally upright.
Right.
And I think that whole the ends justify the means. He's done that so much that and this is where we can talk about, in Catholic moral theology, we talk about the transitive nature of our actions, that our actions are not just this kind of, it's not just a thing that we do, but the transitive nature of our actions means that our actions actually form us as well. So the more I act virtuously, I become a virtuous person. Right. Or the more that I act selfishly, the more selfish of a person I get. And so Saw falls into the whole, that kind of, that morally incorrect, the ends justify the means. Like, I can kill if I have to. Well, not so much if I have to, but if it's the quickest and easiest way to get to, his goal is good. His goal is to defeat the Empire and relieve the oppression of the Empire, but he's willing to sacrifice too much of the good in order to get there. And that changes who he is, and it makes him then suspicious of everyone.
Right.
I mean, he's governed by his passions. His passion for. And I don't know if you want to look at the Force as the moral guide. We know that there can't be morality without God. So in that universe, the Force is the moral guide, and you're either going towards the light and the dark. And I think that Saul was flirting with the dark an awful lot because it got him what he needed. Whether he wasn't doing it, he just didn't care. If I have to use the dark side, fine. Not that he was a Force wielding person, but certainly, if the Force is involved in his actions, he danced that line a lot.
Well, it's like what Luke says to Rey. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, but even like Star Wars kind of tries to point out that that's not the best way to do this, because we have the larger rebellion even say, Mon Mothma in Rogue One is sort of like, yeah, he's an extremist, and they have a rocky relationship, and so Mon Mothma, she and the majority of the rebellion are trying to achieve their goal, but through a much more morally right and just way.
And I think the overall arching argument would be there's no sense in defeating the Empire if we're just going to become another empire in their place. Yeah. So that would be their reason for no, we're not doing it that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that happens a lot in real human history, of course, too, or even just in other things like in the Hunger Games, at the end when it's all said and done, she's like, let's have some Hunger Games. They're like, okay, time out. Like, what did I miss? Well, let me ask you guys, just, some characters have come up already. Do you guys want to share maybe a character or two? We can maybe alternate however you want to do this, as far as maybe some characters you think exhibit some heroic qualities in Star Wars, and feel free to surprise us. No.
Sure. Well, I'll go first, and
please, yeah, go ahead.
It's because I just rewatched the movie, but the pilot from Rogue One who risks everything. I tried to stay away from like the main characters. I mean, everybody knows, Luke Skywalker's a hero, but the pilot, defecting from the Empire to do what's right.
Bodhi.
Bodhi Rook.
Yeah.
He was one that I picked as a hero, because of that. And, there's a very much a willingness to sacrifice oneself for, and in this case, it's the morally upright cause, but a just and good cause. He knows that if he gets caught by the Empire, he's going to be killed for that. And he goes on this dangerous mission to find Saw Gerrera in order to help bring down the Empire, and of course then continues to help out the rebellion, even kind of to the end of his life on the planet with all the
Scarif.
Yes,
I was drawing a blank.
Yes.
The tropical paradise post. Yeah, we said the Bermuda,
Yeah. Tahiti. We had different
I just wish
paradise names for it.
I wish they had actually had, I don't know if they have a blooper of like stormtroopers with Mai Tais and stuff, just like, you guys see like sipping through this just
This is a great gig. Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
You see, the big reason, and I know we said like not Luke, but there's a great way of I watched a great telling of looking at Luke's heroic path through the 3 movies that was really fascinating, I thought. And the first one is how he's thrust into being a hero. He wants to be the hero. He gets off the Tatooine. He's has a chance to impress the princess and save everybody and fly off, and do that. But in the midst of it, he has to let go. He's got to, like, in this sense, it's let go of technology, let go of everyone, what everyone's telling you, and allow the Force to do this for you. And he becomes the hero. And then he's like, great, now I'm a hero. But then in Empire, everything gets turned upside down. Everything is like, he can't, he wants to be the hero, and he crashes his ship, and he messing up on Dagobah, and he messes up. I mean, he rushes into confronting Vader, and the symbolism, the way Lucas does it is he keep on showing Luke upside down. He's upside down in the Wampa cave. He's upside down on Dagobah. He's upside down and below Bespin. So this imagery of Luke is being turned upside down is just like, wow, okay, you can't ignore it. And once again, he has to let go, and he doesn't know who, and he's thinking Ben, but Ben's like, yeah, I told you I'm not going to help you. So he calls Leia, and she comes. So he lets go and is like, I'm not going with you, Vader. So I'm letting go and hoping someone can save me, and it's up being Leia. And he basically crashes and burns. He loses his hand, and it doesn't work out. Then when Jedi opens, we're wondering if he was affected by that, because he's in black, he's choking Ugnaughts, or not Ugnaughts, Grimoraine guards. They all have pig faces, I get confused. But it turns out that he's this hero now, and he has this way about him that he hasn't before, where he's not rushing in, and he doesn't want to fight his dad. He's like, no, keeps on backing off. He gets enticed to do it when Vader mentions Leia as his sister, but then stops and does what I always thought was stupid, because I'm like, oh, if only you knew that Force lightning can be blocked with a lightsaber, you wouldn't throw that away. But he throws it away and says, no, I am a Jedi like my father before me. And for the third time in the third movie, lets go and depends on his father to save him. And through his heroic letting go, he redeems his father, because his father's like, well, now I got to do it. And so, and so that's the hero of Luke, kind of like allowing heroism to come to him instead of trying to get it, trying to grasp it. And that can be like a Christ-like thing. He didn't think equality with God was something to be grasped at. You could look at it that way, but it really was sacrificing, but also depending on others to be there for you, which is so difficult for the hero. How many heroes are just tragically, I'll do it by myself kind of heroes. So that's why I really love the whole arc of Luke's character in those 3 movies.
Wow. Well,
that's an awesome insight. I'd never really quite looked at it that way.
I stole the whole thing from somebody on YouTube, so I mean,
that's fine.
The best material we just kind of repeat from other people. Yeah. But that's fascinating that I mean, even in the cinematography, that's how it makes perfect sense when you lay it out like that. But to see it visually and to kind of to have that all tie together is really a really cool thing.
Those who appreciate Lucas's filmmaking, which isn't always super entertaining. I mean, he would be like this boring documentary kind of guy. He filmed A New Hope like a documentary, kind of like he wanted it to look that way a little bit. But to appreciate that he's always doing homages and callings, and you have to look at how he's doing it to see what he's trying to say. Repeat. Right. Sometimes you thought, like, can't you think of a new line? No, he's trying to call you back to the last person who said that line. He's not like he ran out of words, so you have to kind of follow him along like that and see what he's doing. Sure. And how he likes to tell a story without any words. I wasn't THX like really few words or something. He likes to do it with just pictures. So you can find a lot of stuff in his movies by looking at just the pictures and how he's trying to lay things out.
Well, he's a visual storyteller. Otherwise, he'd be writing novels. But it's
or
interesting.
Doing podcasts.
Exactly. Right. Oh, although I I must say I do get a kick out of listening to him, but I enjoy even more than that the is it Josh Robert Thompson that does all the George Lucas deep fakes, which listeners beware, if you go pursue that, there is some language here and there, but I cannot stop laughing at it. It's just this George Lucas impression is so funny. But no, this is great. And someone that I thought of like during an assembly at school, and I was jotting notes down because that's what happens sometimes with Secrets of Star Wars. It's just it hits you. But someone I thought of that I don't know that I've ever heard. I'm sure someone's done it in way better than what I'm going to attempt. But Shmi Skywalker. And I thought, there's someone that doesn't get mentioned very much in the idea of, and I didn't even know where it was going, and I just had she popped in my head, and I was like, okay, what do we got here? Let's think about this. And I was just thinking about, there's so many. I think there's a real sense of destiny, right, and providence. Even though, and it's tough to think of it that way with Anakin because you know where it goes, the negative side of it, which is a pretty big negative, but. It's just his, obviously Vader's arc is so fascinating and so central. I really think, George seems to have made it pretty clear that that's like the kind of central arc of the entire thing, And I thought you can look at so many turning points, so many things that make it happen, but while you could say, well, if he had never left Tatooine, this wouldn't have happened. First of all, we don't know that. Secondly, the good that happens and the salvation that happens wouldn't have happened either. And then that's real life too, right? Even our the sum total of the most wicked and evil plot that could possibly ever have happened culminates at Calvary, which is also precisely the place of the greatest transformation to grace. So that theme's of course there, but with Shmi specifically, what I was thinking was, she has this innocence, this recognition, and I love her conversation with Qui-Gon, and he's like, who was his father? And she's like, there was no father, and she knows that, anyone she tells that to could just say she's lying or she's crazy, And you get this very Marian, I think, kind of thing here too. Like she very much has a trust, a faith. I don't know what you want to call it, because the Force isn't exactly God, but there's this, this sense that her son is different than everybody else, not just because like how every mother thinks that, it's
we're all special,
right? But it's like she knows that there's this destiny. And funny enough, there's mixed opinions, of course, about the movie. The Nativity Story came out in 2006, I think. I think it's got good stuff in it. But there's a great line in that movie when, everybody's dealing with the scandal of Mary being pregnant. And she just says very kind of confidently, and she's just sort of holding her stomach, and she says, I think the line is something like, there's a will for this child greater than any fear that I have of what they may do to me. Something along those lines. And, Shmi, I think, has this, she just knows that there's a will for Anakin. She's never known what could become of that. Doesn't look like they have a lot of options. They're slaves, but she sees, well, if these people had come into Watto's shop 2 minutes after Anakin yelled, "Yippee!" and ran home, which I'm sorry, I had to mention it, they wouldn't have met him. They came to the shop when they came to the shop. He's not there 24/7. He's there a lot of the time, but, they could have missed him. They happened to be there. They happened to meet him. They happened to meet him again in the street later because Jar Jar's doing his thing and gets in trouble. There happens to be a sandstorm at that exact moment, and Anakin happens to show them kindness and take them home, and Shmi says it's okay, and so anyway, I was just really thinking there's a real, I think, easy to miss, simple kind of everyday, self-sacrificial love and heroism that culminates with her being willing to send him away, and let him go, which also has kind of a Marian dimension to it too, I feel like. So anyway, that was just, I got some Blessed Mother vibes with Shmi, I guess, this week. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, when she says, yeah, there was no father, it's a definite Marian, a virgin conceiving, which isn't exclusive necessarily to Christianity. I mean, there's other stories of that happening, but obviously the big one, especially for us, is Mary.
And on a total aside, you mentioned the nativity story. Oscar Isaac is Joseph in that. I don't know if you ever really knew that, or Poe Dameron is Joseph.
For some reason tonight the connection didn't sink in until you said that. But yes, there's another.
Yeah.
Happy thoughts, Beebs. Happy thoughts. It all connects. We should, it would be a fun episode. Just a side note would be to do some version of a Star Wars 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Would be a fun. I'm going to make some notes about that. We could. It always connects to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oscar Isaacs and Harrison Ford would be a big help with that.
Indeed.
Yeah. I mean, Hamill and Carrie Fisher, not so much.
Well, Hamill's been in quite a few. Like
if you do his voice stuff, then
yeah, because he's been like in DC Comics, and I forget, he's like the DC equivalent of the Joker, and I'm forgetting the Trickster. He's the Trickster in the Flash.
He's also and the Joker and and a lot of other great characters too.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because actually I was dying for an Indiana Jones trailer, which they didn't drop, at least publicly or anything. But even like Harrison Ford and Phoebe Waller-Bridge being up on the stage together promoting the new Indiana Jones movie, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's L3 and Solo, but not the Solo. So that was a weird little. It was like it's kind of a close thing. Anyway, but are there any other hero characters you guys want to throw out there?
I want to throw out Bail Organa as a great example, because his life isn't, well, ultimately he does give his life for the cause, but not in the sense of like he is doing something that leads to him sacrificing his life. He's on Alderaan when it gets destroyed, but more so the fact that he has definitely developed this habitual virtue, towards the good. And he's in my mind what I would consider to be white martyrdom, where, in the church, we sort of refer to, someone who's a martyr, someone who gives their life for the faith. And of course we have all the blood martyrs throughout history, but white martyrdom is living and suffering for our faith in Jesus Christ. But like with Bail Organa, he's living and actively working within the Senate to try to counter, what the empire is doing, and trying to promote good from within, and living and ultimately, suffering daily because of it, because he's naturally getting, pushed more and more into the minority, and has to keep persevering through all of that. And we see that, in a little bit in the Kenobi show, which was really cool to see Bail back for that, and just kind of what we know of his character, and even what we see in the prequels as well. So, living and suffering and perseverance, I think are key for his character.
Sure.
I want to mention Greedo. No, I'm just kidding. Just trying to think. I don't want to mention the third Jawa that came out of the Sandcrawler.
Yeah.
No, this is another maybe more obvious one. But Han Solo is the interesting hero, because he's the reluctant hero. He's the don't depend on me hero, but I'll always be there kind of guy. Like I'm not committing, but I'm never going to let you down, is kind of where he's coming from. And you wonder, something inside him is always like, I got to do the right thing or I can't live with myself. And that's the habit he's developed. But he doesn't like it. He almost like would rather not do it. So you see this battle going on with him. It's a very typical kind of fun hero that you see. I mean, Indiana Jones, you could kind of say, is kind of that kind of hero. I don't want to do all this, but all right, I have to do it. There's Harrison again. But it's an interesting hero to look at, because he's disappointing Leia and Luke all the time. Chewbacca's constantly yelling at him, "What are you doing?" Yet he always comes through.
I love the look on his face in it's one of my favorite shots in all the movies. The look on his face in Force Awakens when they're like, "We need your help," and he's like, "My help?" Like, it's this complete, and he's so serious. you know, like it doesn't matter that he has this exactly what you said, Mike. Like, look at what he's done. He still is like, you know, what are you talking? Like, I got my shit back. Get out of here. Like, I don't, you know, but it's like deep down, it's like, yeah, he's trying to suppress it. He's like, he knows he's going to do it. You know,
it's just like the first time when it's like the princess is here. Well, what are you talking about? No, marching into the detention area is not what I had in mind, you know, and then it's like, oh, she's rich. You know? And then he's like, well, okay, then, you know, then maybe there's a reason. But, you know, it's like, was he really never going to help him out? I don't know.
So I have to throw out that I really appreciate what they did with his character pre-Disney. Mm-hmm. So, and not to knock the sequels and where they took his character, but because I see him more as not so much the reluctant hero, but more the one who went through a conversion and became a hero. So because he was initially very selfish and he didn't want to rescue the princess until he learned that she was rich and he could get money. And, you know, so I see him more as like, you know, he starts off selfish, but then, you know, goes through a conversion and learns to be selfless. And then like in the novels in the Legends universe, the expanded universe, he becomes one of the key like fathers and husbands. And it like, yeah, he's kind of got the snark of like, oh yeah, you know, we're off to save the universe again. But deep down, I mean, he's always going to do it. And he's steadfast and faithful. And in the Legends books and all of that, he very much becomes that person. And so I guess I see it more like that. And I really appreciate that about his character. Whereas the sequels with the post Disney kind of thing, he kind of reverts back a little bit. And I mean, you know, him and Leia separate and, you know, they kind of come back together a little bit. And I really appreciate in the Legends universe, like him and Leia become like the quintessential mom and dad. And they live that call to marriage and being parents incredibly faithfully, even when their kids fall to the dark side, even when their kids die. And I don't want to go down too far down that rabbit hole because I really love those books. Like, really love those books.
I haven't gotten into him as much as Father, but usually it's listening to him on tape, and it is interesting to see how much he's just become the guy, the go-to guy. I mean, he's no different than Luke, and this is someone who you can depend on who is going to go to this. And him and Leia's the relationship is something you can also depend on and look up to in those books. I kind of a part of me when I say that is kind of like he doesn't necessarily like to be looked at like that. He just seems like he's kind of like, still look at me like the swashbuckler kind of guy. You know,
he's much that's how he talks, but it's like it's like, you know, he's got the snark and the sarcasm, but he's going to be there no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, you know, funny enough, another one that I was thinking of who actually has some of the similar characteristics that just came to mind now is actually, well, I was going to joke. You guys can see me. The listeners can't. I'm backing up here. This is the newest edition that my friend Tim and I are going to go broke because we keep, you know, seeing the Star Wars stuff at Target when we're there with the kids. So we'll text each other like, dude, you know, you want one? Like, yeah, get me one. You know, so the newest edition was how do you not get the Miggs Mayfeld action figure? You know, and
hold that closer. Who is that?
Yeah, it's well, I just refer to it as my Bill Burr action figure.
Oh, okay. So, yeah.
You know, it's great. You can't see, it's like incredible tooling on this thing. But I was just laughing because, like, you know, I have a Bill Burr action figure on my wall. But no, I was seriously going to mention Cobb Vanth. Intrigues me as somebody.
Oh, sure.
You know, where, you know, you talk about. Like, and again, back to the 9/11 stuff, like we were just talking about this in school the other day, and we had a great video that we shared. And in fact, I recommend everybody check it out. If you go to YouTube and look up 9/11 boat lift, there's a 12-minute, it's like almost 12-minute YouTube video narrated by Tom Hanks. I think it's like 11 years old, you know, but it's really high quality and everything. Talking about all the largely civilians who just poured out, you know, in their any kind of boat they had to help boat lift people from Manhattan, you know, out. And it ended up being a larger sort of sea sort of based rescue than even Dunkirk was, which I didn't know that. It was fascinating. And so they talked about that. But with that in mind, we're talking about 9/11 and these small, like small communities within this great big city, but a person from this, little part of, town, or this sheriff, or this, not famous people, not people with a huge, long list of people they're responsible for, but, people that have serious and maybe quaint responsibilities, to a lot of people, would just kind of blow them off. And I'm thinking, it's so neat to get dropped into Freetown and see this, how many people live in this town, 30, I don't know. It's not a huge, it's just, people that they're, it's that wonderful Wild West motif, right? And he really intrigues me, and we don't know a whole lot about his background, and you get snippets of it where, he kind of becomes the sheriff because he's the right guy for it. He doesn't, he doesn't seem like he grew up I want to be in law enforcement. He was just a guy who could help people who needed help, and no one else was doing it. And, he sees that injustice, and he wants to, it's just that's an interesting character too, in his circumstances, someone who wasn't even tempted to join, the Imperial whatever, because they didn't even know that town was out there, and they couldn't care less, but they'll still oppress you, so he's just fighting off the people, the wolves, it's just, that's a neat
he's an example of one of those leaders that he's a leader by necessity, and he fits that role incredibly well, versus someone who pursues it because they want the prestige and the power, and who ultimately would not be a good leader at all because of the fact that they want it. He takes it on because he has to. Yeah. Also, on a completely aside, you mentioned the whole Target and spending money and on things that you need, of course. It's funny because I don't have the same impulse when it comes to action figures. Yeah, but I am the type where on eBay I saw this lot of 8 Star Wars novels, and so I clicked on it, and of course I had 6 of the 8, but there's these 2 that I've never seen before, and they have to be total pre-Disney, but they've got to be. I don't even think they must have been officially sanctioned by even the Star Wars people at the time, because I have never heard of these books whatsoever. And so I bought a whole lot because I needed these 2. But it's this book.
They're actually titled Star Was.
Right. Yeah.
So they're not Star Wars.
It's a knockoff. The title of there's book 1 and book 2, and they're both hardback, and they must have 3 stories in each of them, and just. Here's the list of the stories. So the one is Star Wars: The Glove of Darth Vader, Star Wars: The Lost City of the Jedi, Star Wars: Zorba the Hutt's Revenge, and Star Wars Mission from Mount Yoda, Star Wars Queen of the Empire, and then Prophets of the Dark Side. And they're by Paul Davids and Hollis David. So I've I know my novels, and these I've never heard of these whatsoever. So that's where I end up going I don't need 6 of these books, but I need the 2 that's in the whole lot. So listeners, if you've heard of those books and you know what I'm getting into, send us a message, because I'm very curious.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that I'm not familiar with. Oh my gosh. Oh, I don't know, Mike. Do you guys have any other characters you want to mention, or just something we've missed? You think, or
just real quick? I mean, it looked like the book of Boba Fett was Boba Fett trying to become a hero based on what he learned from the Tusken Raiders. Mm-hmm. Kind of that experience, then pulling him into there's not going to be killing. We're going to pull and just trying to bring the people of Tatooine and that area something better. So there was a heroic nature to it that came out.
Well, and with him too, it's very tribe focused, and you could relate that to family focused or community focused, and there's a purpose greater than just himself, where he learned being a bounty hunter was all about himself and the money that he'd get from the bounties. And he's basically the father of a family or the leader of a community, and learns to fight for that over himself.
Well, which is clearly not how the outgoing mayor of his predecessor saw. I mean, he was just completely about power, and
and he took the Power Ranger kids under his wing,
Yes.
instead of just wiping them out. So that was nice.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, we could spend hours and hours and hours talking about all the heroes in Star Wars. And so I guess a few kind of honorable mentions for me was Princess Leia, Admiral Holdo. I especially with her, self-sacrificial act to save the Resistance. Kanan. Another huge example of him sacrificing himself for the good of his family, the rest of the Ghost crew from Rebels, but also, of course, for the larger rebellion. Ahsoka. I mean, like we could just list so many characters, and we just don't have the time to talk about them all, of course. And I don't want listeners to think we're, intentionally not talking about a particular favorite of theirs. But
R2D2.
Well,
actually, he was on my list too.
Yeah, seriously.
I was tempted to throw a huge curveball and see if we could do a whole separate show on the question of whether or not R2D2 and C-3PO have souls. So I was like, but I think they do. I think it's clear that they do. That's the least that we can give them when they've so deliberately tried to ride the wave as long as possible in the wake of the original movie coming out, getting people to think that C-3PO was a real robot instead of actually acknowledging Anthony Daniels in the suit for a while. So I think he deserves to. No, C-3PO has a soul. There we go. So, is there anything else you guys want to share here before we wrap this up? Because we are, like you said, kind of got at that farther. This is a topic that is going to come up, more, and obviously, I think we're setting the stage here to be able to, potentially revisit it and weave it, here and there through discussions of Andor and certainly Mandalorian. As Mando has very heroic qualities as well.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating just in any of these stories to see him to grow from that kind of selfish nature to a hero. Mando being another huge example of that.
Yeah, I think that basically is, I don't like having heroes be turned into people who just, I mean, we're all trying to do our best and we're not, excuse me. Those of us who are trying to do our best, and I'm not saying necessarily I'm even one of them, you can't call everybody a hero. The heroes are the ones that stand out. Otherwise, it just loses its meaning. So that's kind of the one thing I'd want to mention.
Oh, and the other random thing that I wanted to mention too is being bitten by a radioactive spider. There's a reason why we call them superheroes.
Right.
Yeah. Superhero. That's a whole other podcast.
Oh my goodness. Well, as is the dare I mention, this idea of being set aside and dedicated to a particular purpose, of course, is what holiness is all about. So there's more that we can certainly enter into.
All have that call.
Absolutely.
Lumen Gentium, the universal call to holiness.
Well, I think that's it for us, or from us, I should say, this time around. So listeners, what is it that you think makes someone a real hero, both in Star Wars and in real life? So please let us know. We'd love to hear your take. You can email us any feedback at starwars@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can also find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter at SQPN. Previous episodes of The Secrets of Star Wars can be found by visiting sqpn.com/Star Wars. We'd also like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Wars. Especially, we want to mention this week, Carla C., Laura V., Andrew B., Chow F., and Nicholas D. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Wars and all the other shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give.
This is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of StarQuest. I need to ask for your help, but first, I want to thank you for listening to StarQuest and supporting our mission of exploring the intersection of faith and pop culture. In order to continue that mission and create more new shows, we need to bring on more audio editors, video editors, and production equipment. If you value this show, we need to hear from you now. If you're not yet one of our monthly patrons, please become one. And if you're already a patron, please consider increasing your monthly donation. There are many special patron benefits we'd like to give you, and you can learn about them by going to sqpn.com/give and clicking Become a Patron. Please go to sqpn.com/give today.
Last but not least, be sure to follow The Secrets of Star Wars. There's a lot of ways you can do that, right? Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite podcast app. I personally really like Pocket Casts. It's on there. We're everywhere. So also the SQPN YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell to get notifications. We'd also really appreciate it if you'd please take a minute to leave us a nice review and rating on Apple Podcasts and share the podcast with your friends to help us grow our community so we can reach more listeners. And I should say last but not least, don't forget to visit Secrets of Star Wars merch, all the merch, right? It's sqpn.com/merch, t-shirts, phone cases, whatever you want. It's all there. So we will be back in 2 weeks to unpack the long-awaited Andor series premiere. So it's finally here. Mark your calendars. You definitely won't want to miss it. So until next time, Mike Denz, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
And don't forget the Bothans.
We can't.
Many
of them. And Father Andrew, thank you so much as well.
Absolutely.
And I'm Mike Creavey. Thank you again for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
StarQuest wants to hear from you. We're conducting a survey of our audience. That's you, to help us in our planning for the future. Please take a moment and visit sqpn.com/survey. We'll be selecting 2 participants to receive an Amazon gift card as an expression of our thanks. So visit sqpn.com/survey today.